In the dim light of a simple room in Jerusalem, an almost sacred silence hung in the air. Only the soft sound of the disciples' footsteps broke the stillness as they entered. One by one, the room prepared for the Passover celebration. At first glance, it was an ordinary gathering of friends and teachers, but something about the evening seemed different, laden with a weight that none of them could fully understand. Jesus, with a deep, serene gaze, took center stage at the table, as if every moment was being recorded on a larger, eternal plane. Why did this meal seem to be more than just a meeting? What did Jesus know that the others didn't yet understand? He began to speak, his words as soft as they were firm, announcing that this would be the last time they would share bread before something great happened. The table was set with bread and wine, symbols that until that moment had seemed routine, but which would be transformed into something eternal. "This bread is my body," said Jesus, breaking it with his hands, "and this cup is my blood, shed for many." Those words sounded like an echo in their hearts, but there was no time for questions. Every gesture, every word, seemed to carry a hidden meaning, and the disciples looked at each other trying to understand what was going on. Then Jesus surprised everyone with an even more shocking statement. "One of you will betray me." The shock in the room was palpable. Conversation ceased instantly and worried looks swept across the table. Who would be capable of such an act? Judas, breathing heavily, tried to look away but seemed unable to escape the weight of Jesus' words. At that moment, the meaning of what was about to happen began to unfold. It wasn't just a meal. It was the beginning of a new covenant, a milestone that would echo for eternity. And so, in that simple room, under the flickering light of the oil lamps, the story of the Last Supper began to unfold. But little did the disciples know that that night would change the course of humanity forever. If this story is catching your attention, be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave a like. It's the best way to stay up to date as we reveal more incredible truths about the life and impact of Jesus. In the dimly lit room of a modest house in Jerusalem, a profound silence enveloped the air, broken only by the soft shuffle of feet as the disciples entered one by one. The chamber had been prepared meticulously for the Passover meal, a tradition celebrated for generations. Yet, on this night, an unusual weight lingered. Something beyond the ordinary hung in the atmosphere, as if the walls themselves bore witness to an impending event that would transcend time. At the heart of it all sat Jesus, his gaze serene yet piercing, as though he saw not only the faces of those present but the echoes of history itself. Each disciple found his place at the table, exchanging murmured words, their voices tinged with both anticipation and an unspoken sense of foreboding. The room was filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and the earthy scent of wine, staples of their meal yet to be imbued with extraordinary meaning. Jesus rose, and a hush fell over the group. With a voice that carried both authority and compassion, he said, "I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God." His words, though cryptic to some, resonated deeply with others. There was a gravity to his tone that silenced even the most restless among them. He took the bread into his hands that had healed the sick and blessed the children, and he broke it. As fragments of bread fell to the table, he said, "This is my body, given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." The disciples watched, some puzzled, others moved, as he passed the bread around. Then he lifted the cup of wine, its dark red liquid glinting in the flickering lamplight. "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." The simplicity of bread and wine now carried an eternal significance. These symbols, ordinary in their essence, were transformed into emblems of sacrifice, of a love so profound it could not be comprehended in a single moment. The disciples partook of them, each sip and bite drawing them into the mystery that was unfolding. Yet, even as they shared in this sacred act, an undercurrent of unease rippled through the room. For Jesus had said, "But behold, the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine on the table." The statement struck like a thunderbolt. The disciples exchanged glances, whispers growing into anxious murmurs. "Is it I?" they asked, each man grappling with the horrifying possibility. Judas, seated among them, kept his composure, though his heart raced. Jesus did not point him out directly, but spoke again, his voice steady. "The Son of Man will go as it has been decreed, but woe to that man who betrays him." The tension was palpable, the air thick with unspoken questions and a deepening awareness that this was no ordinary evening. Judas excused himself, slipping out into the night, leaving behind a room heavy with apprehension. The disciples, bewildered but trusting, turned their attention back to Jesus, their teacher and friend. What followed was a moment of unexpected humility that would stay etched in their hearts forever. Jesus stood, removed his outer garment, and wrapped a towel around his waist. Taking a basin of water, he knelt before each disciple and began to wash their feet. This act, traditionally performed by the lowliest servant, was met with astonishment. Peter, unable to contain his confusion, protested, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter insisted, "No, you shall never wash my feet." But Jesus, with unwavering patience, answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." At this, Peter relented, his emotions swinging from resistance to eager submission. Then, "Lord, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." As Jesus moved from one disciple to the next, the room fell into a reflective silence. Each man felt the weight of the moment, the paradox of their leader, the one they believed to be the Messiah, stooping to perform an act of servitude. When he finished, Jesus returned to his place at the table and said, "Do you understand what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." His words were both a lesson and a command, an invitation to embrace a life defined not by status or power, but by love and humility. The disciples listened, their hearts stirred by the radical nature of his message. It was a call to a different kind of greatness, one that turned the world's values upside down. As the night deepened, the group left the room and made their way to the Mount of Olives. The air was cool, the stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. Yet, the beauty of the night was overshadowed by the solemnity of their journey. Jesus led them to the Garden of Gethsemane, a place he often visited to pray. There, under the shelter of ancient olive trees, he asked his closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, to keep watch while he went a short distance to pray. Kneeling on the cold ground, Jesus poured out his heart to the Father. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he confessed. "Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." The weight of what lay ahead pressed upon him with an intensity that caused his sweat to fall like drops of blood. This moment, a convergence of his humanity and divinity, was a testament to the depth of his sacrifice. He returned to find the disciples asleep, their weariness a stark contrast to the turmoil within him. "Could you not keep watch for 1 hour?" he asked, his voice tinged with both disappointment and understanding. 3 times he prayed, each time returning to find his friends unable to stay awake. Yet, in his solitude, he found resolve. Rising from his knees, he said, "The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners." Even as he spoke, a crowd approached, led by Judas. The flickering light of their torches danced ominously among the trees. Judas stepped forward and greeted Jesus with a kiss, a gesture of betrayal cloaked in an act of friendship. "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" Jesus asked, his voice filled with sorrow rather than anger. The guards seized him and chaos erupted. Peter, in a surge of misguided loyalty, drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. But Jesus intervened, commanding him to put the sword away. "Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" he said before healing the servant's wound with a touch. As Jesus was led away, the disciples scattered, fear driving them into the shadows. Alone, he faced the beginning of a trial that would culminate in his crucifixion. Yet, even in the face of betrayal, abandonment, and suffering, his love remained steadfast. The events of that night, the breaking of bread, the washing of feet, the prayers in Gethsemane, were all threads in a tapestry of redemption, woven with the hands of a Savior who came not to be served, but to serve. This was not merely a story of a meal shared or a teacher betrayed. It was the unfolding of a plan set in motion long before that evening in Jerusalem. Every word spoken, every act performed, carried the weight of eternity. And as the sun rose the next morning, its light falling on a world forever changed, the echoes of that night continued to resonate, calling humanity to remember and to partake in the love that was poured out for all. To further understand the depth of this night, one must consider the complex emotions that surrounded each participant. Jesus, fully aware of the suffering he would endure, displayed both courage and vulnerability. His humanity was evident in his prayers, his requests for support from his friends, and his moments of anguish. Yet his divinity shone in his willingness to submit to the Father's will, a surrender that spoke of boundless love for humanity. The disciples, on the other hand, were grappling with a mix of confusion, fear, and loyalty. Peter, who had sworn unwavering allegiance, would soon find himself denying Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed. Judas, consumed by regret after his betrayal, would ultimately take his own life, unable to bear the weight of his actions. The others, scattered and hiding, struggled to reconcile their belief in Jesus as the Messiah with the events unfolding before them. The act of breaking bread and sharing wine, simple as it seemed, was a profound declaration of a new covenant. It was an invitation to participate in a relationship with God that was no longer bound by the old laws, but was now rooted in grace and redemption. Each crumb of bread and each sip of wine became a bridge between the temporal and the eternal, a tangible reminder of an intangible truth. And so, the story of that night transcends its historical setting, becoming a narrative that speaks to the heart of every generation. It calls for reflection on the nature of sacrifice, the depth of love, and the power of humility. The echoes of Jesus' words and actions continue to inspire, challenge, and transform lives, offering a glimpse into a kingdom not of this world, but one that is within reach for those who believe. Through the hours that followed, every action seemed imbued with layers of meaning. As Jesus stood in the courts of the high priest, he faced accusations, mockery, and condemnation. The people who had once celebrated him as the Messiah now called for his crucifixion. Pilate, caught between political pressures and his own sense of unease, washed his hands of the matter, symbolically disavowing responsibility for the fate of an innocent man. Yet, this trial was not merely about human injustice. It was the divine plan unfolding. On the road to Golgotha, Jesus bore the weight of the cross, the symbol of humanity's sin and his ultimate sacrifice. Each step was heavy with pain, each fall a testament to his endurance. Simon of Cyrene was compelled to carry the cross for part of the way, an act that symbolized the shared burden of redemption. As he was nailed to the cross, the sky darkened and the earth seemed to hold its breath. His words from the cross echoed with profound significance. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Even in his agony, his heart was set on forgiveness. The thief crucified beside him who sought mercy was assured, "Today you will be with me in paradise." When he uttered his final words, "It is finished," the veil of the temple was torn in two, a dramatic sign that the barrier between God and humanity had been removed. His death was not the end, but the culmination of a love story written before the foundation of the world. The story of the Last Supper, the garden, the cross, and the resurrection is one of hope, love, and redemption. It continues to be retold not just as a historical event, but as a living narrative that invites everyone to partake in its transformative power. Jesus' actions that night were not only for those present, but for all who would come to believe, extending the invitation to partake in the grace and love that flows eternally from that sacred night. And as time stretches onward, the echoes of this night ripple across generations, each retelling serving as a reminder of the boundless love and sacrifice demonstrated in those final hours. The story invites humanity to see not just the historical events, but the transformative power of grace that remains alive and accessible to all who seek it. It is a tale of redemption that asks each person to reflect on their own journey, to embrace humility, and to find hope in the promise of renewal and forgiveness that flows unendingly from that sacred act of love. The cross, once a symbol of shame, now stands as an emblem of eternal hope, reminding all who gaze upon it that the light of grace is brighter than any shadow of despair. Thank you for joining us on this journey through extraordinary events. If you found this meaningful, please subscribe to our channel, leave your like on this video, and share it with someone special in your life. Together, we can spread these powerful messages to more hearts around the world. See you in the next video.